taking a side, but in not taking a side, he's taking a side.
Absolutely.
He's taking a stance in and of itself, and causing you to be incredibly frustrated with him, with the ideas, with the absurdity of it all.
And sometimes that's where the controversy comes in. Somebody who may not necessarily be taking a stance, but is purposely trying to throw out other ideas. And I'll leave you guys with this thought, and then we'll transition into my explanation for why I did this. You guys as colleagues for a second as opposed to students. We're going to talk this semester about a thesis, an antithesis, and synthesis. You guys are all familiar with a thesis statement. You guys talk about it in English 101. It's what you're trying to prove in an essay. But here's where we're kicking it up a notch in comparison to English 250, or English 101. In this course, English 250, I want you guys to not only find information that supports your thesis statement, but I want you to find people who disagree with you. What Aristotle called antithesis. Antithesis. Whatever you say, it's white, black, good, bad, whatever it might be. And the reason is this. At the end of the day, when you guys start taking all of your research and start putting it together, you have your thesis, you have your antithesis. As you start to negotiate these two different perspectives and try to bring them together in some respect where they can actually coexist with each other, what you're fundamentally creating is synthesis. And anything that exists inside of this is perhaps closer to the truth. That's what I want you to be exploring in your research and in your writing this semester, is finding the truth. We'll talk next week about exactly what that whole truth thing means. All right, jumping out. From there, I take them in a completely different direction. We start talking about logos, pathos, and ethos, research, et cetera, et cetera. My methodology behind this. Let me take a couple minutes and explain it, and I'll kick it over to Susan. Rhetoric is a term that students hear all the time, yet they very seldomly know what it means. If they know anything about it, they usually understand how society tends to perceive it, and usually it's a bad thing. Rhetoric equals a lot of blah, 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 and that's pretty much it to them. So I want them to hear the term thrown around a lot. Or during the course of the lesson, after I would have gone through what I just talked with you guys about, we would start talking about what was the classical definition of rhetoric versus the modern definition of rhetoric, built upon a lot of what you just did. But if I stand up here and lecture at them and talk about where I see Colbert being one way versus the other one, the potential is I'm not making it authentic to them. So that's why I have them look at it from themselves first, relational learning. You tell me if you want to be controversial. You tell me if you want to be arguable. You tell me if you want to be clearly defined. And then once after they work through those three terms and make it something that they can identify with, then I have them use those terms as a way to analyze and to evaluate what Colbert does. And the consequence is they tend to be a lot more critical and a lot more evaluative, since there's a certain level of comfort with these new ideas, these new concepts that I'm throwing out at them. And that also goes into logic, emotion, and ethics, as well as thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. These are totally new terms for some of these students. And yet using the video clip and then having them use it right away tends to get them to really get into the meaning of these terms much faster than just simply throwing them on a PowerPoint slide, making them write these ideas down, and then pretty much go with it from there. Any questions you have for me before I kick it over to Susan? Yeah.
What is it that made that activity that Chris did active learning? It wasn't the video clip.
You got to work in groups. Right.
Partly.
Yeah, it's all figuring out the message, asking good questions, getting to a deeper level.
It's what he did with the video. I've sat in a number of classes where an instructor will use YouTube. It's so accessible. They just say, watch this. You know, he did a pre and a post. He gave the students what he wanted them to look for. And then he had an activity to follow it up. It's the same thing like saying, read chapter 10 for homework. And the instructor doesn't understand why they didn't understand it, because it was all totally new to them. You've got to give them some scaffolding. You've got to give them some structure, whether it's a question or come back with the 3 things you learned from that chapter, or discuss the major thing, or what didn't you understand. You've got to give them direction. You can't assume they're at a level of understanding, reading and understanding, even interpreting film, that you are. So the brilliance in that lesson, and I think it was brilliant, I actually saw Prince do this at Milwaukee in his class, discuss someone else, and I saw this, and I said, how would you like to do that at the next workshop? And I saw the students engaged. the brilliance in that is not the YouTube. You can do it with any YouTube in any one of your subjects, providing you set it up ahead of time, what you want them to look for, and then you do something with it afterwards. I mean, what was he teaching? He was teaching an introduction on how to write this, but what Colbert got to do with writing? Got nothing to do, but he used it. Could have used other videos. You could use, I mean, there's so much available that it's so easy. Okay, thanks, Chris.
The only thing I would mention, and we talk about developing reciprocity in our classrooms, that's a fundamental aspect to active learning. The best part about when I deliver this lesson and why I like to do it this way, it shuts me up. You'll notice where I stood for most of what you folks were doing off in the corner. That wasn't because I was just trying to lean against the wall after a long day. I try to stay as far away from the students as possible, let them work individually and feel as if they had a certain level of independence and a certain amount of responsibility. Plus, when they're talking with each other, there is a sense of community that I'm trying to foster within the classroom that is really essential for these students to be successful. That, give it over to Susan.
And I'm going to recommend that we take a break because it'll take me a minute or two to set up, and we are right going up